We're back on CTS Weekender, and time to turn our attention to business, and more specifically, small business. I'd like to welcome back Allison Graham. Great to have you back again.
Great to be back.
Now, today I wanted to, we've been discussing small business with you in the past. There are so many different things to consider, though, especially once you've taken those steps of you've got your business set up. Then you need to get it out there. You need to make the right connections. And there are so many ways to do that. One-on-one's important, and events can be such a major way to do it.
Well, it is. And networking, we always say it's not what you know, it's who you know. Mm-hmm. And so, business owners are expected to get out and network. But when are we ever told? Mm-hmm. And so I used to struggle with this. There was so much pressure going to an event, and you walk into this room full of people, and it's like, okay, now what am I supposed to do with this? So because I struggled with it, what I've done is actually created a whole bunch of different formulas that I followed when I got started, and help other business owners follow as well.
So is it fair to say then, once you've set, there is a lot to do in setting up your business. There is a certain amount of homework that should be dedicated to targeting the events you need to see.
Right, so you need to figure out where you need to go to be in a target-rich environment for people who are most likely to be able to buy your product or service. Mm-hmm. So once you are very clear about your niche and have a way that you can communicate what it is that you do and what you have to offer to people who you meet, then you actually go to an event. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes when we put networking and we put that business word around it, and profitable networking especially, then there's this pressure that goes with it. So I often like to think about, what do you do in a social situation? So if you were going to an event at your friend's house, mm-hmm. and she said, come on over anytime after 8 o'clock. What time are you going to show up? Probably like 9, right? Fashionably mm-hmm. late, and then anytime. So this is if it's a party where you have maybe 50 or 100 people coming. But if you show up right at the beginning, then you get a chance to meet and talk with the actual host. Same thing in business situations. Instead of walking into a room full of people already engaged in conversation, show up right at the beginning so that you can meet the leadership, get connected, and then let the crowd fill in around you.
But I would suspect that when you're going to these events, there's a tendency that we all have as well. As in a regular social situation, we go to a party, and who do we go to first? The people we already know. And it's that comfort thing, and it's soothing, and you feel like you belong. But obviously in business, going to the people you already know, that's very social and lovely, but this is not going to help you accomplish what you need to do.
That's right, because if you want to build your network, that means you actually have to network. And so there's a balance between connecting and reconnecting with the people who you already know and meeting new contacts. So you may go with a buddy, but be sure that, like a networking buddy, mm-hmm. but be sure that you actually split up and you're talking. I think the reason that I started my speaking business originally and have had so much success with that is because companies would spend money, 10 people of the same company, to go to an event, and they all go, and they drive over together, and then they get their drinks together, and then they stand in the side of the room together, and then they go and they sit down together, and then they leave 4 hours later, and they don't have any value for having been in there. Right. So instead, go and look maybe for somebody who you know, but then move to the center of the room where all the event energy is happening. Mm-hmm. And if you're talking with somebody who you already know, open up your conversation to somebody else to come in.
All right, so let's approach that awkward space. When you go up, you've seen someone that you know is an important target for you. You need to go. How do you begin this conversation comfortably and with some assertion? With some assertion,
yes. Well, and people say, how do you start a conversation? Well, the easiest way, and it's not that difficult, but just to say, make eye contact and say, hi, how are you? And it sounds so basic, but then you need to have somewhere to take it from there. So how are you enjoying the event tonight? And from that conversation, taking it deeper. So, what is your connection? How did you end up here? Do you come to this event a lot? And trying to find that mutual connection between the two of you. Mm-hmm. I think when people try too hard to start a conversation off at a really deep level, or, saying something really clever and witty, it tends to turn people off a little bit. We want to be as natural as we can with our personalities. Okay. So use the situation to start the conversation, and then take responsibility for deepening the level of conversation you're having.
All right, but now there becomes that dangerous point when are you just leeching on someone? Yeah. How do you know when to end your conversation, and how do you walk away from that conversation with the contact information you need?
Right. So every interaction at a mingling professional event should happen within 3 to 8 minutes. So if you find yourself and you're wanting to talk with somebody longer than 8 minutes, so maybe 10 minutes, then that's great. That means you've connected enough that you want to connect again.
You have more to talk about.
You have more
at
to
a
talk
later
about.
date.
That's right. So nobody usually will go to the event just to talk with you. So you don't want to I know. As difficult as that is to believe. But so you don't want to monopolize anybody's time. So that 8-minute mark is the perfect time to exit the conversation. And in terms of exiting conversations, in my book, I actually outline 3 ways to exit a conversation gracefully. So there's the verbal disengage, the third-party introduction, and the gotta go technique.
Okay.
But really what it is, you want to change the tone of the conversation. So the verbal disengage is simply, well, Sharon, great to see you. Do you have a business card?
Okay.
So something that changes the tone of the conversation, and then you can exit gracefully.
And another question, when you walk into one of these business, obviously you're giving a certain amount of time, and it's a decent amount of time per conversation. Should you aim to get a certain number of connections at an event, or should you just go with whatever happens?
Well, I would focus more on quality of connection versus quantity of connection. So, but at the same time, if you're not meeting 5 new people, then you maybe are one of those people who's just stuck in your comfort zone.
Right.
So be aware of that. But definitely, I would say 5 to 10 is a great sweet spot for an event, but be sure that those are quality connections.
Right. And then I would think, now I have to sort of look to myself, what would I do? When you leave an event like that, do you make notes? Should you somehow be reminding yourself of who you've met and what the next step is?
Absolutely. I think this is where a lot of professionals go wrong, is because they go to an event, they meet a whole bunch of people, and then they leave and they rejoin their life already in progress and forget about all those connections that they just made. So instead, before you get back on your BlackBerry and start going on with your life, just take a few minutes to retrace your steps and everybody who you talked with, all the conversations you had, go through the business cards, make notes on the back of them, determine who are the best people to follow up with, who did I make those little let's do lunch promises to, so that you actually make a to-do list, so that when you get to your office the next morning, you can say, okay, I need to close the loop on what happened last night, on that time investment that I made. So then you have a to-do list, you make all those follow-ups, and you've done your job.
Very good. And actually, just one more thing popped
Sure.
in my mind. So I would imagine in certain circumstances when you're building your small business that you're being observed for the way you're conducting yourself. I guess there are some do's and don'ts you should be aware of when you're at these events.
Absolutely. So when we think about every interaction that we have with another person is going to either add to, subtract from, or reinforce the opinion that they have of you. So if you're putting off a brand that isn't necessarily trustworthy, doesn't believe that you're competent. When I speak with investment advisors, I often joke that, in those golf tournaments, that there's always one guy who flips the cart.
Yep.
And it's often an investment advisor. But when you think about the trust that's required to give somebody your financial portfolio to invest, that's just not making a great impression. So
you have to be smart about it.
You've got to be
well,
smart.
some great advice and lots more in your book.
Thank you.
I'd like
yes.
to direct people to check out your
Yeah.
book, and I look forward to having you on again. I have lots more I want to discuss with you.
Would love to. Thanks.
Thanks, Allison. Allison Graham joining us today, and we have more coming up on CTS Weekender in just a moment.